What's up, duelists? I'm Smashton or SmashtonYGO, and today I'm going to be looking at a tier list. As you can see, as I scroll down here to the bottom, this is going to be a tier list of boss monsters in the Duel Monsters era of Yu-Gi-Oh! Every card on here I would consider to be a boss monster in some way or form. And by boss monster, I really mean some kind of monster, some kind of creature or guy who you're going to slap onto the board and expect to make a huge impact. Whether that be something that's going to be hard to remove, or something that grants protection, or something that alters the game state, something that does removal, something that goes in for a big push to punch for game. Whatever it is, these are cards that I consider to be boss monsters, not utility monsters. You're not going to see an Exiled Force in here, or a Hane or a Man-Eater Bug that are small but just kind of get used up and then they're gone. These guys are supposed to either stick around or go for a really big push, and we're basically going to be evaluating how good they are at doing that. The nostalgia is going to be a factor. All of these cards I recognize in some form or fashion, and I have attachment to from childhood. But I'm going to be trying to think of them from the gameplay perspective and how impactful these things would be if you slap them on board in front of your opponent. So we have 6 tiers here. S is going to be like the above and beyond. Like, these cards were absolutely game warping, crazy, amazing. A are really great cards. Like, these cards are something you could build an entire deck strategy around, or they could hugely impact the game and even win games by itself. B are really good cards that you want to put into your deck, or that you can build a collection of cards around. C are cards that are kind of okay. You could take them or leave them. Maybe you run like one copy, maybe you take it out completely. D are cards that maybe have like 1 or 2 good things about them. And then F are just like the worst of the worst. There's no real reason to run the card if it's an F. And starting off with our first monster here, we're going to be evaluating Blackluster Soldier, the Ritual Monster. So this is going to start a bit of a trend here, I think, for Ritual Monsters in general for the Duel Monsters era. And even though Blackluster Soldier is super cool, I really think he's one of my favorite like design cards in terms of art. Like, I just think he looks super dope, but he has a 3000 stat line, but he's gonna be put in F. I just can't justify it when we can see another card coming in the future who does the exact same thing that Blackluster Soldier Ritual does, but doesn't require the ritual spell in addition to needing the tributes for the Blackluster Soldier as well. I could see the argument that you don't need them on board necessarily to make Blackluster Soldier, whereas Blue Eyes, you need the monsters on board, but it's just not enough. It's too much resource, and if you don't have the spell, it's just dead in your hand, and it's not worth it. Next, we're going to go with a big one, the other Blackluster Soldier, Envoy of the Beginning. This card's absolutely insane. Game breaking, was seeing play even all the way in the future. And I'm not necessarily judging these cards by how good they are today, but just the fact that not only was it amazing back in its release in Invasion of Chaos, but also it can still see play years and years later. Blackluster Soldier Envoy of the Beginning was a completely game warping card, game winning by itself, banishing cards, being able to attack multiple times. It had a huge body, easy to get out by just banishing a light and a dark. Blackluster Soldier Envoy of the Beginning, absolutely incredible card. It deserves to be in the first slot of S. So next we have Red Eyes Black Metal Dragon. Now, as cool as this card is, it's gonna go in F tier as well. It's only 2800 body, and you need Red Eyes Black Dragon as well as Metalmorph, the spell, to make this thing. There's no protection on it. It doesn't do anything extra. Metalmorph by itself gets eaten up by it, and so it's not even like getting that attached to it. If it kept Metalmorph around and just upgraded the body, it might go into D tier. But because Metalmorph gets eaten, and Metalmorph can kind of be a good card on its own, just put it on a Red Eyes and let it sit there. Like, that's probably a better play than this card. So unfortunately, that's going to be an F tier. Moving on to Ryukoki. This is going to be, I think, a pretty easy A for me. Ryukoki is really incredible. Has a good stat line for an attack monster. It isn't necessarily going to completely win the game on its own, but what it is, it's like one of the best things that you can summon off of a Pyramid Turtle after it gets destroyed by battle. This thing is like automatic because of its stat line. It plays in any zombie deck or any deck that runs Pyramid Turtle. this thing can easily come out, just become a big body, and that gives you a lot of like momentum swings when you're playing the game. All right, next up we have End of Anubis. Now this card is interesting because it's actually seeing play right now in certain decks, which is absolutely absurd. Because its effect is while it's face up on the field, all effects of spell, trap, and monster cards that target cards in the graveyard or that activate in the graveyard are negated. So it basically is a graveyard shutdown. Now today, clearly in the decks that are playing it, it works. Back in the Duel Monsters era, I think it's a D. Again, today it actually sees place in certain decks right now, but back in the day, there just weren't a whole lot of stuff that were going to interact with the graveyard. Like there were some for sure, but Yu-Gi-Oh has definitely evolved to the point where graveyard's huge nowadays. But back then it wasn't as big of a deal, and you really kind of wanted board presence more than anything. And for a level 6 that's 2500, that's not bad, but I don't know if it's necessarily worth. Now Grand Mark, I think just the fact that it's a monarch and it's easy to summon, it's automatically going to put it in a higher tier up here, but I think I'm going to put it in C. It's definitely the worst of the monarchs that are on the list, because all it does is it can destroy a set card on the field, and that's about it, which is just worse than what like Mobius and Zabor can do. So C tier for it. It's still a solid card, and it's just not as good as its other counterparts. Next, Archfiend of Guilford. This one's interesting. When it's sent to the graveyard, you target a face-up monster on the field, equip this card to that target, and it loses 500 attack when equipped with this card. It's a level 6 that can, so it's a 1 tribute that's 2200. That's a pretty F tier card, my guy. It's doing nothing. It's weaker than a Summoned Skull. It has to be sent to the graveyard, and then it can reduce attack by 500 when DM era had plenty of cards that could do that anyway, or just maybe just run a card in this slot like a Acts of Despair that could buff your monsters instead of reducing your opponents and like giving them access to a card. That's not very good. Now Guilford the Lightning is a weird one. It needs 3 tribute summons in order to be summoned, but then once you do, it just completely destroys all monsters your opponent controls. So it's essentially a Raigeki on a, what is that, 2800 body. And it's pretty decent, but 3 tributes is pretty hard to do. It gets a little easier to do later on in Duel Monsters era, but it's such a cool card too. It's better than End of Anubis. I'm gonna put it in C tier. I think Grand Marg is better, just because it only takes 1 tribute instead of 3. But if you play like a tribute deck, I can see Guilford the Lightning making a way in there if you just want to play something a little cheeky. It definitely has a place. It's a little harder to do, but I don't think it's horrible. I wouldn't necessarily play it, but it's okay. It's okay. I wouldn't like think that you're a terrible deck builder if you put it in there. Now, Spirit Reaper, on the other hand, is like an easy S card as well. Again, this is not just a list about big monsters. This is also about cards that just by themselves, you kind of just want to sit on sometimes. And Spirit Reaper is that. Even though it doesn't have really a good stat line, this thing just being able to not be destroyed by battle and just kind of sits there is incredible. It's so hard to out this thing, and sometimes you have to waste like a really powerful card just to get this thing off the field. And then on top of that, if you do let it go into attack mode because your opponent's board is empty, then it just rips the card out from your opponent's hand, which is just incredible. Like, this thing is just like, there's a reason why there are some formats just called Reaper format, because it just was this card. This card's incredible. Patrician of Darkness, I think it's pretty underrated. I'm gonna put it in, I don't know if I'm gonna put it in B, but really high C. The reason why it's not in B is its stat line. It only has 2000 attack, which is just not very good, but being able to choose the attack targets of your opponent's monsters is actually pretty solid. If you can set up a decent board and they start trying to like poke through it or make a big guy who could beat through it or whatever, I think it's a little underrated. And here it is, the all-powerful Blue Eyes White Dragon. Will I put it in S tier? Will I put it in A tier? Will I put it in B tier? I think for fairness, I've gotta put it in C tier, below these two. Maybe like here. Of course, the obvious problem is that Blue Eyes, while it is 3000 attack, while it is one of the coolest monsters in all of Yu-Gi-Oh history, it's just a 2 tribute vanilla. There's no protection, there's no additional parts to go with it. It is just a 3k vanilla that costs you 2 monsters, and by the time you get to the end of Duel Monsters era, that just doesn't cut it. Now, it can see play in like Dragon decks and stuff like that. You can find ways to cheat it out, but I just don't think those were consistent enough. And Blue Eyes as a monster itself, you can't really sit on it because it's too susceptible to enemy attacks. But it was used in the early game. Like, you could just genuinely just run this card in like early Yu-Gi-Oh decks, like 2002. And so that's why I'm going to place it in C, just because in the early Yu-Gi-Oh, Blue Eyes was definitely playable before we got all these new cards. Hayabusa Knight is like a perfect B tier, I think. Hayabusa Knight is really simple, 1000 attack stat line, but can attack twice during each battle phase. And that sounds really like kind of whatever. But back in the day, when you had some really powerful equip cards, this thing could almost OTK. Like, sometimes it would OTK if you had enough equip cards. Like, if your life points were low, you had a Megamorph, then you slapped on an Axe of Despair, you would go to town. I think Hayabusa Knight is one of these underrated cards too that like people liked, but I think in the right circumstance and the right kind of deck that builds around this card, it's actually like really strong. Horus level 8 is also going to be a B tier. I played against this a lot with TJ from Dual Towers, so make sure you go check that out, by the way, if you like some casual Yu-Gi-Oh content like this. But Horus level 8 is relatively easy to get into and just prevents spells from being activated against it. It like negates spell stuff. And that was pretty powerful because although spell and trap removal was pretty prevalent in early Yu-Gi-Oh, just being able to cut one of those off was pretty powerful. And I want to be completely factual here. It looks like either player's turn, if a spell is activated, negate it and destroy it, you must control this face-up card to activate and resolve this effect. That does not look like it is once per turn. So it literally just cuts off spells. It is basically a Naturia Beast, but in like 2003 or 4, which I think is pretty good. The problem is getting to it because it has to be special summoned by a level 6, which usually is going to be special summoned by a level 4, and going through that level up process can be really difficult sometimes. So I think that's the main problem with it, but honestly, being able to just cut off spells is pretty good. Next, Mobius, easy A tier, above Ryukoki for sure. Just being able to destroy spell and traps on the field is huge, especially because priority existed back then, so you could force them to out the Mobius, but you're still going to pop their back row. Mobius is incredible. I don't have to say much there. It's a great card. Zork, Darkmaster Zork, he's really interesting. He's the die roll guy. So if you roll a 1 or 2, you can destroy all the monsters your opponent controls. So you get to Raigeki if you control 1 or 2, or roll a 1 or 2 on the dice. If you roll a 3, 4, or 5, you destroy 1 monster your opponent controls, so you're still popping something. So majority of the time, you're getting rid of something on the board. And then if you roll a 6, you have to destroy all of your own monsters. So it's literally just like a better time wizard because you have a less chance of rolling that 6. But no matter what, roll 5 through 1 and you're destroying something on your opponent's side of the field. The problem obviously is that it's a ritual monster and you need contract with the Dark Master. But I mean, there's some jank strategies that use this, and I think it's pretty fun to play with. In the right circumstance, it could definitely make some damage. And again, being able to just roll a dice and like 5 out of 6 times you're gonna get something good, that's pretty solid. So Skull Archfiend of Lightning is gonna go in D tier for sure. Below End of Anubis, it literally is just summon Skull, but you have to pay like 500 life points every turn. And when an opponent tries to target that card with an effect, you roll a 6-sided die and negate it if it's 1, 3, or 6, and then pop that card. But like, there's a lot of removal in early Yu-Gi-Oh that doesn't need to target, such as like the Raigeki, Dark Hole, Fissure, that kind of stuff. So like, and Smashing Ground and stuff like that. So I think this card just isn't really worth running, especially like by the time this thing came out, Summon Skull himself was already kind of phasing out. So I don't think he was very great. Yamada Dragon is going to go in like high C tier. There's another spirit monster that I'm going to put a little bit higher, and you guys can guess kind of which one that is. But Yamada Dragon is really cool because Yamada Dragon essentially says that if you inflict battle damage with it, you're just going to draw 5, and that's freaking incredible. Like, draw 5 when you just punch in with this thing is crazy. The problem is that it's not that strong for a 2 tribute, 2600 attack, and at the same time, it's a spirit monster. So like during the end phase, it's just coming back to your hand, and you just lost those 2 tributes. So like you are going to draw 5, which is crazy. But you have to have the right circumstance and build the right deck around this card, and it's a little more clunky to do than something that we'll see later with other spirit monsters. So Nephthys is going to be put in A tier for sure. It is 2 tributes, which is something to consider, but again, I think there's enough stuff in early Yu-Gi-Oh that 2 tributes isn't that big a deal, especially since Nephthys doesn't come out until like literally the last set of DM era. And so by that point, you have plenty of stuff that you can use to get it out. And it literally just revives itself over and over. If you get this thing off of the board, every standby phase is coming back. And then on top of that, if that's not hard enough, it's also going to wipe the board of spell and traps. So like, this card, when TJ would play this against me when we played old school formats, it wreaked havoc on me. Like, holy, this card, bane of my existence. Nephthys is a good card. Okay, Archlord Zerato. I'm actually going to have to read this one. I've never read it before, which may also indicate what placement it should be on. But can't be normal summoned or set. Can't be special summoned except by attributing a Warrior of Zera on your side of the field while Sanctuary in the Sky is on the field. So that's not a good start. You need Warrior of Zera and a field spell on the field at the same time. That's not great. If Sanctuary of the Sky is on the field, by discarding a light monster card from your hand to the graveyard, destroy all monsters your opponent's side of the field. If Sanctuary of the Sky is not on your side of the field, you just don't do the effect. 2800 on a level 8. Okay. This sounds like a C tier card. It's a bit I'm gonna put it in D tier. It's a bit too specific. It needs 2 specific cards on the field. Then you also need a tribute for it. So you lose the card. You have to have a light monster card in your hand, and you lose the light monster card, and then you finally destroy all the monsters on your opponent's side of the field. That's just a lot of steps. I could see it being used, I guess, but maybe not in the DM era. This is definitely, it's just a bit too much investment. So we're on Fushio Richie now. Where is Desert? Great Desert. Oh, there he is. Found Great Desert. Okay, yeah, they're going both in F tier. They go hand in hand. Great Desert has to destroy 2 monsters. And by the way, it's a level 6, 1900 attacker. So that's going to be hard to do. It's got to destroy 2 monsters, then it can get Fushio Richie out, which, to be fair, Fushio Richie does have protection. But, like, the conditions are absurd. These guys are extremely difficult to summon. They're not even that good. Like, the Fushio Richie has a little bit of protection, but, like, nah, they can stay in F tier. Now, Lava Golem is really tough to evaluate. Lava Golem is crazy today. It's an insane side deck card for a lot of formats because it just destroys 2 monsters on your opponent's side of the field, and you're giving them a 3000 body, but you're burning them for 1000, and also you're getting rid of 2 threats, pretty much. So, like, in the modern metagame, that's really, really good because you get rid of like 2 negates on the board or something that threaten your ability to play the game. Back in the day, I'm gonna put it in C tier. Mostly because I think back in the day, giving somebody a 3k body for like and getting rid of your normal summon is a lot worse, because keep in mind, I'm pretty sure the way Lava Golem works is that if you use it, you can't do a normal summon. So unless you know you have BLS in the back or something, or some chaos monster, I think Lava Golem is just a little too much to give your opponent for DM era. DM era is a little too slow. So I'm gonna put it at C. I could see it being useful if your opponent has like a pretty strong board. Like maybe a Nephthys, because now you're tributing it instead of destroying it, and so it won't come back. Nephthys in like a BLS or whatever, but like, I don't know. It feels like if they have a board that's strong enough with 2 monsters that you're threatened enough to use Lava Golem, you're probably losing that game anyway. Okay, Dark Dust Spirit. This card's great. I love this card. I love playing this card. I love running this card. It is a 1 tribute 2200, so the stat line isn't crazy, but it's not horrible. And whenever it's summoned, it just destroys all face-up monsters on the field. Just all of them. Just every single one. And it is a spirit monster, so it is going to come back to the hand. But being a 1 tribute, that's going to just wipe the board for free for you. And then you can also get in for 2200. That used to be super powerful. Like, that's super easy to do. That is like just free. Like, literally just have like a Treeborn Frog, or like just like snatch steal your opponent's monster, or like tribute their opponent's monster with Soul Exchange or something like that, or use that like Temple Field spell to be able to get this thing out for free. Dark Dust Spirit was a great card. I really like this card. I think it deserves A tier. Blue Eyes Shiny Dragon is F. You literally couldn't even summon this card when it came out. Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon wasn't out yet, so as cool as it is, F tier. Chaos Emperor Dragon, that's an easy S tier, right alongside with BLS. Chaos Emperor Dragon's probably stronger in its heyday, but in modern times, like because of erratas and stuff, it's definitely fallen off. But Chaos Emperor Dragon, probably the arguably the most powerful boss monster they made in the entire Duel Monsters era. I mean, just being able to wipe the board, the hands, do life point damage to your opponent, and have a huge like 3k body on the field that you could then go in for game, you pretty much win the game. Like, that's it. You pretty much win the game. Like, you go in, you punch, you like easy to summon, light in the dark. Like, this card literally just won games all on its own. You had to have a plan for this, and to be quite honest, there weren't really a lot of plans for this outside of using like banish decks, Macrocosmos and stuff. Chaos Emperor Dragon, it deserves to be up there and argued for like the best boss monster in the format, or not the format, but in Duel Monsters era. Magician of Black Chaos, or not Black Chaos, just Dark Magician of Chaos. I'm gonna put it in A as well. This card was crazy. I want to make sure I have the correct like pre-errata text of this card. When this card is normal summoned or special summoned, you add a spell card from a graveyard to your hand. Already great, because it is basically a Magician of Faith, but instead of being on a weak flip monster, it's on a really powerful monster itself. And then a monster that is destroyed by this one as a result of battle is removed from play instead of going to the graveyard. So it's also like a control sort of board for these banished monsters. When this card is destroyed or removed from the field, it is removed from play. So this card essentially just lets you get you spells back into your hand, and then also served as like being able to just control the board. I think this card's just really, really good. And like its stat line isn't even bad. 2800 is pretty powerful. I think it deserves to be an S tier. I think all the 3 Chaos monsters from Invasion of Chaos are just incredible. I think they do go in this order though at release: CED, BLS, and then Dark Magician of Chaos. You could argue A tier here, but I've seen what this thing can do, and I fear it. This card's powerful. The one Chaos monster from Invasion of Chaos that I will put lower than S, I should say, is going to be Chaos Sorcerer. I'm going to put it in high A tier. Again, it's just a free summon. If you have a Light in the Dark, you just put that thing out. It's got a good stat line for its body, and it can just free banish a card on the field. It can't attack that turn, but who cares, because you're getting rid of the biggest threat your opponent has. So it's definitely an easy include in A. If you're running a Chaos deck, I don't know why you wouldn't run Chaos Sorcerer too. Okay, Dark Necrophier. I'm going to have to reread this one really quick because I've never played a deck that actually used it. But it can't be normal or special. It can't be normal summoned or set. It must first be special summoned by the hand by banishing 3 fiend monsters from the grave. During the end phase, if this card is in your graveyard because it was destroyed in the monster zone by an opponent's card and sent there this turn, target a face-up monster your opponent controls, equip this card to the target. While this card is equipped by a monster to this effect, take control of that monster. So you essentially have to get this thing on the field by banishing 3 fiends. You have to get it destroyed by an opponent's monster, and then you get to equip it to that monster and then take control of it. Maybe that's a hot take. I don't know. Maybe that's a hot take, but that seems like a lot when that seems like a lot just to steal your opponent's monster, especially because they know it's going to come. So, like, they could just prepare for it. That doesn't seem very good. Okay, Valkyrion the Magna Warrior, one of my favorite cards as a kid from the anime itself. Must tribute Alpha, Beta, and Gamma. You can tribute it, then target an Alpha, Beta, and Gamma in the graveyard and special summon. Yeah, okay, all right. Yeah. That's kind of absurd. 3 tributes. They have to be specific tributes, unlike Guilford the Lightning, which can be like 3 anything. Valkyria needs 3 specific tributes, and then it's 3,500, which is huge, but it just summons back the 3 Yeah, that's not good. Thousand Eyes Restrict is a crazy card, especially once they print Instant Fusion, but pre-Instant Fusion, it's still just like an incredible card. Actually, without Instant Fusion, is this as good? Yeah, actually, I'm gonna put it in high C tier. Look, this would be like A or S tier if Instant Fusion was printed, but we're doing just DM era, so it stops at Lost Millennium, like just before. Lost Millennium is not a set that's out yet, and GX era has not begun. There's no Instant Fusion, so this thing can't just come out for free. You would actually have to use like Polymerization with Relinquished Thousand Eyes Idol. That's not very good. Like, its effect is great, don't get me wrong, but that's a lot of investment for the kind of effect that it has. Once Instant Fusion comes out, it instantly goes to A or S, but for now, I almost want to argue D tier because of that, because it is 3 cards to go into this, which just equips a guy and has protection one time. I think I'm gonna keep it in C, but I'm gonna go low C. Pumpkin's cool, but he's not amazing. He can buff himself and stuff like that. There's some cheeky zombie strategies you can play on early on, but zombie strategies become way crazier once Ryukoki becomes a thing. So Pumpkin's gonna stay in D because it does have some playability, but it's not crazy. Hot S is just awful. Is literally in the same conversation with Gizzard Man over here and Fuchsia Richie. So, this Levia Dragon or whatever it's called, that's gonna be a D tier as well. I'm gonna put it in C, and I'm gonna put it above Grandmark. Actually, I think about it because it is 2 tributes, which is true. But again, DM era, you can kind of get those fairly easily, I feel like. But you just got to destroy an Umi, which if you're playing a deck that's running this, you're gonna find ways to get to Umi, and you can just literally destroy all cards on the field, and it's a 2600 body. I think that has its uses. Ocean Dragon Lord Neo Daedalus. This thing can't be norm summoned or set. Needs to be special summoned by tributing a Levia Dragon Daedalus, which we already put in C, so its effect better be pretty good. You can send an Umi you control to this graveyard, send all cards in both players' hands and on the field except this card. That's literally just a worse effect. You're punishing me for putting extra effort to get this guy out. If it said, like, wipes the board and all of the cards in your opponent's hand, maybe. Or even, like, shuffles back graveyard or something like that. But this is not worth it because you're also blowing your own hand, and that just doesn't seem very good. Machine King's cool. He's going to be D tier though because he's 2 tributes. He's just big, and then if you have other machines, he's just bigger. But machines weren't very good back then, so easy D tier. Legendary Fisherman. Legendary Fisherman's also going to be D tier because it has protection for spell effects and target from battle, but like your opponent can still attack you directly through it. So like, and you're tributing for a 1950. You could summon a Summon Skull, bro. Manticore of Darkness is cheeky. I'm going to put in C because it has those cheeky strats, like it has that Manticore of Darkness loop, which can play a factor. It's a pretty cool card, but it's probably not winning a game on its own. It's probably going to be supplemented by a different strategy, or you're just trying to go for the Manticore of Darkness loop, which is pretty inconsistent anyway. Big core, if you've watched Simo's Masochist series, you know MK3's been kind of crazy for him. But regular BES big core is pretty whatever. He's probably better than these guys. But it literally is just, you still have to normal summon it. It's 2300, gets 3 counters, can't be destroyed by battle, but every time it gets attacked or whatever, battles, you get rid of a counter, so it gets protected 3 times. Meanwhile, you can just set a Spirit Reaper and get the same thing but forever. So yeah, I would just play Spirit Reaper. Grenmaju is going to go in B tier. Now, Grenmaju can do a lot more in the modern game, obviously, because it's easier to banish stuff. But I think it's going to be B tier for now because of the fact that Grenmaju, it's a lot harder to get a lot of banished stuff in old school, like Duel Monsters Yu-Gi-Oh! And so, like, Grenmaju's effectiveness becomes really reduced. Nowadays, you can literally basically banish your whole deck in like a turn sometimes and just make Grenmaju like 10,000 plus. Back in the day, bit slower of a grind game, but he is a cool card that you can slam down pretty quickly. I'm kind of convincing myself to go down to C. But I think he's probably much top of C. Exodia's silly and ridiculous, but he was never really that good. I want to put him in C tier because you can play like draw cards. You can like cheese him out sometimes, but in early Duel Monsters era, that was really hard to do. So we're going to keep him chilling there. And part of it is also nostalgia. I kind of want to put respect on his name. We just watched YCS Indy on Sunday where we saw, and Saturday where we saw Jeff Leonard win. Like it was going like 4-0 with Exodia. So I think that kind of just shows you the power that Exodia can have sometimes. Relinquish is an A tier card. It does require a lot of investment because it is a ritual monster, but its effect is actually incredible. It's very similar to Thousand Eyes Restrict, except it's a lot easier to do. And it's basically like, as long as you have the ritual spell and any monster in your hand, plus this, like you're pretty much going to get there. And you can run a deck that runs like Sonic Bird and like Manju of 1,000 Hands and stuff like that to get what you need. So with old school Yu-Gi-Oh, you can play that kind of grind game, and Relinquish is actually a pretty great card. I think Relinquish is worthy of A. King Dragoon, it is a level 7 fusion that needs Lord of D and Divine Dragon Ragnarok. Your opponent can't target dragon monsters with card effects, and then once per turn, you can special summon a dragon monster from your hand. That sounds incredible. For early DM era, that sounds insane. That sounds crazy. You can't target dragons, which it is a dragon, so you can't target it with card effects. And then you also get to just special summon a dragon from your hand for free. That sounds crazy. You know what the problem is? It's a fusion monster. And that means you need to get Lord of D, you need to get Divine Dragon Ragnarok, which both cards are kind of bad. And you also need to have polymerization. You need to get the dragon on the field without it getting hit by anything. And then you can start playing with it. It's only 2,400. It's going to go in D tier. I still think this thing probably has some application if you can get there. Just like this card by itself, if you can put it on the board, is pretty freaking dope. Like you heard me, what I just said, right? Can't target dragons with monster effects. Special summon one from your hand for free. And you can just do that every turn. Old school Yu-Gi-Oh, that's nuts. The problem is the 2 monsters you got to run to fusion summon into it are horrible. So that's why it's going to stay in C. Otherwise, that card would be insane. Dark Flare Knight is pretty bad. It again, fusion monster, needs Dark Magician and Flame Swordsman. It gets a lower stat line than Dark Magician, so like what's even the point? You take no battle damage, sure, but when it's destroyed, you get the special summon a Mirage Knight from hand or deck. Mirage Knight's just kind of okay. This is a really high investment card for not a lot to gain. Injection Fair Lily is going to be put probably at top of B. It's sort of a double-edged sword kind of card because you're paying a lot of life points to get its effect, but it does become huge and basically becomes like the biggest threat on the board once it uses its effect. And like quite often you can run this card when it came out and like it would either clear immediately whatever you needed it to clear, or it would threaten enough that your opponent would have to hit into you. Its biggest problem, I think, is that you had to basically do the effect multiple times. Like, it didn't keep the attack buff to the end of the turn. You had to do it every single battle. So you could only do it a finite number of times, and then you also had to declare it first, and then your opponent could respond with something to like remove it or something. So it's a little iffy, but sometimes Injection Fairy Lily really would just change the tide of battle by herself. All right, let's read Shinada really quick. It is a ritual monster. It's got a pretty good stat line. Must blah blah blah. When this card destroys a defense position monster and sends it to the grave, inflict damage to your opponent's life points equal to the original attack. That sounds like a high D monster to me. High investment, high attack stat. Essentially does piercing damage, but not really. But that's it. No protection, nothing like that. It's gonna be a D tier for me, buddy. Creator is a revive on like a 2300 body. TJ's used it against me before. I'm still not fully convinced that it's that great, so I'm gonna put it down here. It's used pretty decently in like chaos decks. And it is just a graveyard revive. It can load up your graveyard for chaos strategies by discarding a card as well. The problem is it is just like a level 8 that you have to kind of just run. But it is a light. It has a place. I think I'm gonna put it in C. It's decent. Kaiser Glider is pretty decent too. I'm gonna put it around this area. Kaiser Glider is an interesting card because it's a 1 tribute with 2400 attack. Can't be destroyed by battle with the monster with the same attack, but if it is destroyed by battle and sent to the grave, or just destroyed at all, you can target a monster on the field and then return it to the hand. So if your opponent like tribute summons a big guy and he beats over the Kaiser Glider, well, you can just spin that thing back to its hand, and now they're going to tribute summon again or whatever. I think it has its use. Insect Queen's pretty awful, requires a high investment, and it needs to keep getting bigger when a lot of these other monsters are already strong enough by themselves. Insect Queen, not a very good card. Oh yeah, it also can't... It has to get 200 attack for each insect on the field, and it can't even attack unless you tribute a monster. Yeah, that's staying in F tier for sure. Dark Magician. Now, we see Blue Eyes only made it to C tier. Dark Magician is literally just worse than Blue Eyes. Part of the reason why Blue Eyes is also in C tier is because there is dragon strategy is like real. Especially later on, you start to see even in DM era, a lot more dragon support. Like even in the first couple sets, you see stuff like Smashing Destruction or whatever, the dragon spell that destroys spell and traps if you have a dragon. It has its use. Spellcaster's got a little support, but not nearly as much as dragon. So I don't want to put it in D, but I'm gonna put it in C. Low C though. Low C, just to be clear. I think it has a place. I gotta be honest, it's gotta go D. It's not a very good monster. There's better cards that you can 2 tribute summon for, one of them being Blue Eyes White Dragon. It kind of pains me to put it in here with these guys, but like I gotta take a stand, and like it's not a good card. Like Dark Magician by itself, just as a guy, it needs support, and like Blue Eyes at least can be 3k. If you tribute summon Dark Magician and your opponent tribute summons Blue Eyes, you're both staring at each other with vanillas, and one of them has a higher attack stat, so guess who's gonna win that interaction? Red Eyes. Don't get... Y'all, please. Remember, this isn't just nostalgia here. Red Eyes Black Dragon is a really bad card, okay? It is a 2 tribute that is weaker than a lot of 1 tributes. If you're running Red Eyes Black Dragon, like, it's 2400 for 2 tributes. You can literally run tons of 1 tribute. Every single monarch literally trades with it, and a summoned skull literally beats it, like, for 1 tribute. Red Eyes is not a good card. It's an awful card. I'm sorry. That's just the truth. Harpy's Pet Dragon. Gains 300 attack and defense for each Harpy leader on the field. Cool. That is also pretty bad. I'm gonna put it right here. Guardian Angel Joan, this thing has like life point increase. This is an example of like a 2 tribute that actually does something, unlike Dark Magician, which is just a body. I'm pretty sure Joan is bigger too. I think it's like 28 and it gives you life point increase, whereas this is just 27 and does nothing. So I think Joan definitely can get the high C tier. This card requires way the XYZ Dragon Cannon is such a high investment card for very little. Serpent Night Dragon is the same problem as Red Eyes, where it's huge investment for like really nothing really going on for it. You can just play anything else. Now Gemini Elf is interesting. I'm gonna put it in B tier. Gemini Elf, while not seeming like a card that could be considered a boss monster, like Gemini Elf Beatdown was a real strategy, and being a 1900 attacker at the time that it released, like there wasn't a lot of those, and so like this became a mainstay in a lot of decks just to have a really, really powerful normal summonable monster that can beat over most other things. So I think it deserves its B tier for that reputation. Mazera Deville is basically similar to his counterpart over here. Where is it? Here. I'll put him here. Still really high investment, but instead of wiping the board, he just gets rid of 3 from your opponent's hand. Later on, I see him being used a lot more in like other kind of strategies, like Fiend strategies and stuff like that can play Pandemonium and get him out easier. But I think in DM era, he's the same as the Zera over here. So, Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth, just Confession, is like one of my favorite cards ever, just period. Just art-wise, I always thought it looked super cool. I love the blue with the like different shades of blue here. I love the idea of like the worm like going into cocoon and then blossoming and metamorphosizing, like building up power to become this huge, powerful, like insect moth looking thing, like this freaking Mothera looking guy. But it's a garbage card. You have to wait 6 turns and hope your opponent doesn't destroy your Petite Moth and Cocoon of Evolution, and then you get just a 3500 vanilla. So it's awful. Gate Guardian, also same awful. You have to not only tribute summon Sangha and Suijin and Kazijin, but also then tribute all those guys off who have individually an actual like effect just to make a Gate Guardian, which is just a vanilla monster. So pretty bad. Dark Magician Girl is going to go right next to her counterpart, Dark Magician, because she's a weaker version of Dark Magician. She does get buffed for having Dark Magicians in the graveyard and stuff, but she's already so low that I don't think even having 1 Dark Magician in the graveyard gets her on the same level. So she requires even more investment than Dark Magician does. So I'm gonna keep her there. Summon Skull, just gonna put some respect on his name. When he came out, he would be S tier because you're just auto including him in every deck. He is the best 1 tribute that you could have played when he came out. And so for that reason alone, I'm gonna put him in S tier. Obviously he gets faded out of the format, but he's incredible the moment he came out, and that legacy still lives on. Exodian Necross is an F tier card. It requires so much investment. You need all of the Exodia cards in the graveyard, and then you can get this guy out. He gains 500 attack, but that's kind of all it does. It can't be destroyed by battle or spell trap effect, but it also needs contract with Exodia for him to be able to come out. Way too much investment. You might as well just play regular Exodia. Total Defense Shogun isn't awful. I'm gonna put it in like low C tier. It's a 1 tribute that has a huge defense. Gets to be normal summon in defense mode, which is like one of the only cards I know of that actually does that. And can attack while in defense mode. So like as a defensive option, it's not horrible. Like it's actually not that bad. It was a promo, but like that's pretty solid. Now it will just get destroyed by anything that's bigger than 25, and it can just be removed by anything. But I mean, for an initial early game card, like that's pretty solid. Hunger Burger is F because it requires high investment for not a very good card. Ojama King, same thing. As much as we love Ojamas in this house, Ojama King's not a very good card. Black Skull Dragon, as freaking sick as it looks, y'all. Like Black Skull Dragon looks sick. Not a very good card. And then we have Dark Balter the Terrible. Dark Bolter is like high B tier for sure. Being able to just negate normal, just negate normal spell cards by paying 1,000 life points is sick. It requires a bit of investment, but it's pretty sick. It's easy to get out with instant fusion, which is the argument for like putting Thousand Eyes Restrict here. But it's actually like got a 2,000 body, so I think it's more worth it. I'm gonna maybe not B tier though. I don't think it can hang with these guys. I'm gonna put it down here. Yeah, I'm gonna put it about right here. This feels good. That just seems like pretty solid. Flame Swordsman, high investment. It's only like 1,800, not very good. Blue Eyes Toon Dragon, again, like these are all nostalgic cards that I love. Like I absolutely love these cards. They make me feel very warm inside. But high investment, does not do a lot. Just play regular Blue Eyes. Tyrant Dragon's pretty sick. Can't be affected by trap cards. Big body. Pretty worth playing, especially if you're playing like a dragon deck or like a high tribute deck early on. Tyrant Dragon's pretty strong. I actually like it a lot. We're going to do these two right off the bat here. Jinzo and Yada are insane. We all know Yada Lock is like a crazy thing. I've been Yada Locked before. It's not fun. TJ, hate you for that. But it's not just one time either. But incredible powerful card. This card basically, if you can get the setup right, this card just wins the game. Jinzo, same thing. If your opponent's playing a lot of back row, you just throw a Jinzo out and like they have to find a way to deal with it. Otherwise, like your traps are done and like there's a third of the game you can't play anymore. Jinzo's crazy. Spell Canceller, back in the day, we'll put it as like a utility card with Dark Bolter. Nowadays, like it's a lot easier to summon, and we saw it being played not that long ago. But in the old days, stat line's not very good, and negating spells is good, but like it just didn't have the stat line. You could just punch over it. Zombie Vampire Lord, whatever this dude's name was, I'm gonna put him in A. Good target off of Pyramid Turtle. Really cool guy to summon. Brings himself back, stuff like that. He's definitely an A tier card. He's in contention with Ryukoki of the best thing that you can summon off a Pyramid Turtle. Gaia, the Dragon Champion, is F tier, really high stats, but high investment for 2 tributes there. Level 7. Okay, level 7's a D tier card. If you're gonna play an Armed Dragon deck, level 7 is not gonna be in it. The reason why is that it gets rid of your level 5. And the level 5 is just better than level 7. Level 5 literally just gets the discard pop. This thing has to discard and then pop everything that had lower attack than what you discarded, instead of what it should be, which is it destroys everything that's lower attack than itself, because it's 28, which is pretty big. But no, it's lower attack than what you sent to the graveyard. So you're already invested. You have to have another big dude in your hand and then choose to invest in this guy instead. That's not a very good effect. Suijin is going to go in D tier along with Kazijin and Songa, because they all do the same thing, but at least they have 1 tribute, decent stat line, and they have 1 effect at least that works 1 time. Bazoo's crazy. I'm going to put in B tier, B for Bazoo. It's better Injection Fairy Lily. It gains a lot of attack. It's like Gren Maju, but more playable at the time of Duel Monsters. Incredible card. I'm kind of get through these a little bit faster. Silent Swordsman's cool, but this one specifically, I think this is the level 7. Actually, I'm gonna put this one in C tier. I couldn't remember which one this one was. So this one is the one that's like a cross out, where if it fights a face down defense position monster, destroy it, and then if you do, place it on top of the deck, so you're stacking your opponent's deck too, which we know Phoenix Wing Wind Blast is a pretty powerful card, all things considered. So if you can get this thing out, pretty solid effect there, especially with set monsters dominating early Yu-Gi-Oh for a while. Two-Sum Skull, horrible. Again, investment, Toon World. You have to have Toon World on the field, and that's basically a spell card that just sits there and does nothing. Just play Summon Skull. Labyrinth Wall is going to be like a pretty solid C tier card. I'm going to put it back here, because this is a perfect like Giant Rat target, especially in the early game. If like turn 1 you set Giant Rat, your opponent punches into it, you can just activate Giant Rat, bring out the Labyrinth Wall and attack, and then as long as they don't have anything past that, past your turn, put it in defense, you just got a 3,000 defense body that you didn't even have a tribute for. Pretty solid strategy. Freed is very situational, but I'm gonna put him right here with Dragoon because just for the, like, it has a little bit of protection, but the most important thing is being able to just replace your draw with adding a level 4 lower warrior monster from deck to hand. So he's basically a Rhoda by himself if he sticks around. So he's really good in warrior decks as like a 1 over 2 of that you can just get out as a guy. So I appreciate him for that. I think he has a use. Chaos Command Magician's gonna go in low C tier. He's 2,400, which isn't a lot, but he is 1 tribute to sort of balance that. But he negates any monster effects that target this 1 card. If he could negate just 1 effect, maybe he'd be really higher, but it's only for he himself. And like, there's just, like, again, Summon Skull can beat over him. So like, you don't even really need to target him or anything like that. Just Summon Skull him and you'll be fine. So I put Yugioh in here because this dude is basically like, I want to put some respect on his name. You could literally just, Yugioh, if you're attacking, you flip the coin, and if it doesn't go your way, you lose like half your life points or something crazy like that, right? Because he's like a 2,100 or something like that. He's a crazy big body for a normal summon. But the best part about using Yugioh is literally just normal summon Yugioh, pass. And like, your opponent's going to have to figure out what they're going to do with a 2,100 attack monster, because they're not going to attack into it. They can summon their own Yugioh, but now you're just staring at each other like an idiot. Like, Yugioh was a great card when it first came out. I wanted to put some respect on his name. Okay, Hinokagutsuchi is the other spirit monster I want to talk about that I think deserves an A tier along with Dark Dust Spirit. It does require the 2 tributes like Yamada Dragon, but I think it's better because especially early Yu-Gi-Oh, what this does is when you inflict battle damage, whereas Yamato draws you 5, during the draw phase, Hinokagutsuchi will just discard your opponent's entire hand. They get to draw 1 card. That's it. They get 1 card. So I think the investment is super worth it, especially because by the time you're throwing Hinokagutsuchi down, you're pretty much doing so because you think you have the game pretty well in hand, and you're basically like getting rid of their entire hand and saying like, all right, you've got to top deck the craziest thing ever or else I'm winning here. So Hinokagutsuchi is a sick card. This is like Gatling Dragon or something. You have to use like Barrel Dragons to fusion summon it. Not very good. Not very good. Too high investment. You might as well just play the Barrel Dragons, which are easier to get out. Paladin of White Dragon is a high D tier card. I think this card is dope. This one used to be one of my favorite cards as a kid just because of the artwork and I thought it looked cool. It lets you get blue eyes, I guess. And the problem is it's ritual summon, which already dings it a couple tiers, and it's only 1,900. If it was like 20 or like 2,000, 2,100, it might be different, but it's not very good. La Jin is going to be a B tier with Yugioh. Same kind of thing with the Gemini Elf. These cards all kind of do the same thing where they're just like the best beatdown monster that you could play right there. And personally, I think beatdown monsters count. So they're all going to be here. Silent Swordsman level 5, unaffected by spell effects, which is pretty good. It's only level 5, so long as he's a tribute. If it inflicts battle damage to your opponent by a direct attack, you can send this face-up card to the graveyard and special level 7. But honestly, just having a 2,300 level 5 that's unaffected by spell effects is like not the worst thing in the world. I'd put it above Command Knight Magician for sure. Zaborg goes along with his brethren Mobius, A tier. Being able to just pop cards on the field is good on a Monarch. These Monarchs are always going to be great, so they deserve to be there. Okay, Vampire Genesis. You have to banish a Vampire Lord you control to special summon it, which is already a ding because Vampire Lord is already one of the best cards that you could be playing in a Vampire deck. But the payoff is you get a 3,000 attack body that once per turn discards a zombie type monster to the grave, then targets a zombie in your graveyard with a level less than the discarded zombie, special summon it. Yeah, that's gonna be a D tier monster for sure. The body can be useful, the 3000 attack. Outside of that, just keep the Zombie Lord. Okay, Despair from the Dark. I'm going to put it in... I think D tier. The problem with it is that it's only affected that if it's sent from hand or deck to grave by an opponent's card effect, you can special summon it. But that's really hard to do. If you can pull it off, then he's a pretty big body that you're going to be able to just like slap onto the board. Because he's 2800. But outside, like, that's very specific. Like, it's not as hard to get it sent from hand to graveyard in this era because there's a lot of hand control going on. But deck to graveyard is very specific, and it's also requiring your opponent to like interact with you. So and like a lot of the cards that pitch, your opponent's going to pitch a card from your hand is random. So there's just too much chance going on with this card. Masterpiece is funny, but again, Ritual Monster, it's huge, but that's about all it does realistically. So it's going to go down. Berserk Dragon's pretty bad. I'm putting in D tier though, because it does need a deal with Dark Ruler to be able to be summoned, but it is 35. It can attack all monsters your opponent controls once each. It will lose 500 attack though, so I'm actually going to put an F because that's really bad. Like, that's really bad. Luster Dragon number 2 is basically the poster child of why Red Eyes Black Dragon's bad, because they have the same stat line, but Luster Dragon number 2 only costs 1 tribute. So he's higher than Red Eyes Black Dragon because he's a better card. Yeah, but he's still also just a 2400 vanilla. Just play Summon Scroll. Harpy Lady Sisters, bad card, 1900 tribute summon, doesn't do much outside of that. Maha Vilo's crazy. I'm going to put in B. Maha Vilo, in a similar vein as Hayabusa Knight, just goes nuts with equip spells. Like, this card goes nuts with equip spells. So I think this deserves high B tier for sure. Like, this could literally OTK by himself. King Tiger Wangu. Wangu is a really strong control card, especially if people are playing weenies. Like, if your opponent's playing a recruiter deck, then it's like extremely powerful. I think it's probably a B tier card, honestly. I don't think it's better than some of these normal summonable walls in their heyday, but like being able to just basically shut off 1400 attack or lower cards, like all the recruiters, which were really popular in old school Yu-Gi-Oh, I think that's really worth playing. Buster Blader is far too situational for the cost that it takes to make it. It requires your opponent to do stuff, requires your opponent to be playing specifically Dragon, so it's got to stick here in the D spot. Last Warrior from Another Planet is like crazy. I'm gonna put it in like high D tier here. If you can get this thing out, he basically shuts the game down. He literally just says, like, you literally nobody summoning monsters anymore. Like, you are not summoning monsters this turn. It needs Zombira the Dark to make, which is not that bad because Zombira the Dark wasn't even that bad of a monster early on. It also needs another card, Marioku that isn't very good, but to be honest, like, I think the investment is situationally worth it. You kind of have to have things set up for it to really work out, but like, there's ways to cheat it out later, but we're not really taking that into account, so which is why if this was like all the way through, like, it could be cheated out in some of the ways that later Yu-Gi-Oh can, it'd probably be like up here in A. But for now, if you're going to invest in running Zombira, Marioku, and Poly to get this thing out, I think it's got to be C. Go Gaga Gigo is... what's his stat line? So Giga Gaga Gigo is level 5, 2450. So, I mean, it's bigger than a Red Eye, so it's automatically going to get higher than Red Eye. It's not going to get much higher than that. It's probably better than a Luster Dragon, I'll say that. It's 50 more than a Luster Dragon. Dark Paladin is really interesting. It needs Dark Magician and Buster Blader, which is insanely high investment. And what you're getting out of it is 2900 attacker that can discard and negate a spell activation, and then also gains 500 for each dragon monster on the field or in the graveyard. I don't think it's terrible. The investment is pretty ridiculous, which is why I'm going to probably put it below even the Zera cards here. But negating a spell card with discarding a card once we get later on, especially with chaos stuff, I could see it being played for like fun and having like a scenario where it's decent. Like, and maybe I'm putting a little too much stock in like negating effects because I'm a modern Yu-Gi-Oh head, but like, I mean, it's really the investment that makes this card not amazing, right? But I guess that's, I'm putting it in D tier. Okay. Rebuild the cards is like, it's an F tier card. It's a tribute summon monster that you're gonna have to set, and then when you flip it up, it can destroy a trap. Sure. And its stat line is awful. It's not worth it. Thessalos is going to be in B tier. I don't think it's as good as Zaborg or Mobius. But being able to rip a card from your opponent's hand is always good, and it can be played really effectively in like hand control strategies. So, and it's a Monarch. Monarchs are always going to be good. It'll stay there. Let's see. Penumbral Warrior. I think that's what she's called. Penumbral Soldier Lady. If the battle's a light monster, it gains 1,000 attack during the damage step only. It's 2,100 to start, so it becomes 3,100. D tier, very situational. Your opponent has to be playing light, which they probably are, but like most of the best cards in Chaos are dark anyway. So the lights aren't really the problem. It's really the darks that are the problem, outside of like exactly Blackluster Soldiers. So if it did the opposite, I might put it a little higher, but because it only deals with lights, I'm going to put it in D tier. We'll put it higher than these guys, though. Yeah, this feels right. This feels okay. This feels better. Probably right here. Yeah, I like that. Okay, Sword Hunter, 2 tribute, 2450 at the end of the battle phase. If this card destroyed a monster by battle and sent to the grave, equip all those monsters from the graveyard to this card, and it gains 200 attack. That's pretty bad. For 2 tributes, that is not worth it at all. Can you imagine, though, if this card was like Mahavilo on a 2 tribute body, it might actually make it a little bit higher, but it's not, so it's going to stay here. Arm Dragon level 5. We put 7 because its effect is awful. Level 5 is actually going to be put in low B tier for me. It's really easy to get out with a dragon strategy, and then it's got a decent stat line and can just pop stuff on the field by discarding a card. So it's a good card. I think level 5 is a good card. Fiend Skull Dragon. Need a Cave Dragon and a Lesser Fiend. It's an Archfiend card. Okay. Fusion summon of this card can only be done with the fusion materials. Negate the effects of flip monsters. Negate any trap effects that target this card in the field, and if you do, destroy it. That's pretty high investment for a 2,000 body. We're gonna put it in. Let's see here. It's like, I'm gonna put it up here. It's like, it does the spell negate thing. It's really the flip monster effects, and like flip monster effects are pretty powerful, but it's only 2,000, which gives me pause. Like a Jirai Gumo could be over it, so I think I'm gonna put it like in D tier, around here somewhere. Moki Moki's hilarious. I'm gonna put it in like high D tier just because it can special summon like a bunch of Moki Mokis like crazy. But it's a Moki Moki, dude. Like, I don't know what you want me to say. It's just probably gonna sit there. But if you can do like the Moki Moki thing where you get a bunch of them and you make them all like 3,000 attack, freaking crazy. Will that happen most of the time? No. Will that happen like 1 every 10? Maybe. But like, I don't know. It's here. I'll put it like, I'll put it low. I'll put it low. I would probably play. I'll put it low. I'll put it there. I don't want to put it in F because Moki Moki's that guy, but I'll put it there. Dark Sage, definitely F. Air Knight Parshath is crazy, especially when it came out. It was super worth running Air Knight Parshath. Even though it's lower stat line than like a Summon Skull, being able to draw every time you deal battle damage is huge. So especially in hand control format. So Air Knight Parshaft is crazy. Here for the legend, solid as well. I'm gonna put him up here with Freed. Being able to equip as many like equipped spell cards in your graveyard as possible to monsters you control, just any of them that you want that are warrior type, is pretty sick. And I think I want to confirm, but I think Mahavilo, no, it's a spellcaster. Okay, pause. But just being able to make your guys quick, like this guy could drop onto the field and literally turn the tide of battle if you can get it there. I think he's cool. I think he's a cool card. Master of Oz, he's dope, but he ain't worth playing. Fugitive Dragon is pretty sick as well. He's pretty easy to sort of cheat around his like attack defense becoming halved effect, but like he's a normal summonable guy that has a decent stat line, and like he won't be 28 if you do it that way, but like it's pretty solid. I think and there's like ways you can cheat him out if I remember correctly. I'll put him down here. I'll put him down here. I think he deserves to be there. I forget this dude's name, like orc guy, big orc or something. He's in the same conversation as these guys, except not quite as good. So I'm gonna put him in like high C tier. Judge Man, awful. He's here because he's one of the other tribute monsters that's in the Kyber structure deck, and he's just god awful. Behemoth's also bad. Red Eyes Darkness Dragon is also bad, only using zombies, but even then, you're playing other things. As dope as this card looks. Invader of Darkness is, I think he's interesting. Your opponent can't activate quick play spell cards. That's right. He was played like in Pearly meta for a while. I'm gonna put him in D tier with. I'm putting him in D tier with the Skull Dragon over here. Thousand Dragon, awful. Too high investment for not good enough. Infernal Flame Emperor is pretty cool because he can pop spell and traps by banishing like fire monsters and stuff. But I think he's in the same conversation with. I think he's a little better than the water guy, just because he doesn't actually need to he doesn't punish you specifically as the player who summons him. So I'm gonna put him in like low D or whatever. Insect level 7 is not supposed to be here. It's supposed to be like a level 5 or whatever came out. Level 7 comes out like in Lost Millennium, I believe. But just pretend like this insect is actually like the level 5 or whatever, and it stays in F tier. It's not even good. Blowback Dragon is a D tier card because it's just a weaker version of Barrel Dragon. Where is Barrel Dragon? Barrel Dragon, I'm gonna put him in B. He's actually pretty solid to play early on, especially early on in early DM. Like he is a big dude, and like he can threaten board sometimes. Like sometimes all you need to do is just get lucky, and he's gonna go off. Berserk Gorilla is like probably one of the best of the like big normal summonable beatdown monsters. Like Berserk Gorilla can do some damage. Go Giga is, I guess he can go down in like high D tier, I think, just simply because of the fact he's 2 tributes, but he's like weaker than Blue Eyes, so like I don't know, man, it doesn't feel great. Benkei is going to be a we'll put him with right below Freed. He can OTK, and that's literally all he does, but he is an entire strategy by himself, and it's not that hard to get the OTK to work, so we're gonna put him there. Trihorn Dragon is pretty sick. If you don't pull Blue Eyes from Legend of Blue Eyes, like this guy's the next best thing. And for that reason, I'm gonna put him in low C. He's a pretty cool dude. Shadow Ghoul is pretty sick as well. I'm going to put him above Labyrinth Wall because Shadow Ghoul gets that effect where he gains attack for everything in Graveyard. And I've had that come and bite me in the butt a lot with TJ like playing this in a deck and like summoning it, and like our graveyards are stacked and this thing becomes huge. And I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to deal with that. I don't have Fissure in my hand right now. This card's pretty decent. Reaper on the Nightmare is pretty high investment, but it's not awful. I'm putting in C tier. If this was like this is Gravekeeper's like Watchman or something. If this was like Gravekeeper Spy or like Guard or something, it would be pretty high. But because it's Watchman, I'm going to put him in D, maybe even F. Crab Turtle, F, because it's Ritual. Obedient Fiend, F, because it's really freaking hard to summon, my guy. I like Guardian Sphinx a lot. I'm going to put him in like high C tier because he essentially says like, you just tribute for him and then set him. And then if your opponent flips him up, or they're probably going to get hit by a 2400 defender. And if they don't, and you get to flip someone on your turn, then you get to just return all the monsters your opponent controls to the hand, which is a really powerful effect that your opponent's going to have to like, your opponent's going to have to think about that when you tribute set this. And I tell you what, man, I don't know what it is, but tribute setting monsters just throws people off and they don't be thinking about that. So I like Guardian Sphinx a lot. Exarion Universe was a promo. It's 1800, which is a pretty decent stat line. During battle step, if this card attacks a defense position, make this card lose 400 and then inflict piercing. That's like okay. I'll put it in high D, I guess. And then Rock Spirit is just a free special summon body guy. So he definitely goes in, let's say like high C tier. Okay, and that's the list. Wow, that took a while. If you stuck around for this long, make sure you let me know down in the comment section below. Say something like, let's see, say something like Moki Moki is my favorite card ever. If you say Moki Moki is my favorite card ever in the comment section below, I know that you'll have watched to the very, very end. What do you guys think about this tier list? Let me know that in the comment section below. Let me know if this is something you want to see more from me. I had a lot of fun making it. So if you enjoyed that, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and let me know that I should keep making more content. We still got GX era, we got 5Ds era. We can keep going all the way. We can make tier lists all day. So if you want to see that, make sure you let me know in the comment section below. I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.